Hey everyone, I hope you're having a fantastic day. My name is Hamilton Winters, and I'm the host of this podcast series called Inneractions. Today, I'm so excited to bring you episode 16, our final episode of season 1, with my friend Brian Barton on the topic of development. We hope you enjoy. Brian, what's up, man?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
It's great. It's a pleasure to be here, and just enjoying the vibes of the room. And
Yeah, man.
the lights and the different aura that it brings.
Of course. And I think every week we ask the guests, like, what are you feeling right now just being in the studio? What does it feel like?
Feels good. Something I'm comfortable with. I love to talk, and any opportunity that I can use to send my message out, I definitely will try to take advantage of it. So being in this situation, it's a great feeling.
Yeah. Well, why don't we do this? Why don't you introduce yourself to the listeners and kind of give them a background of how we came to become acquainted and kind of how you got in the seat today.
Well, everybody, my name is Brian D. Barton. I always tell people don't forget the D, my middle initial. But I pretty much am a guy from Los Angeles, California. Have a humble background. Grew up with 3 brothers. Found out that I had 3 sisters later on in my life. But for me, that was a situation that I've learned to overcome over my life. I had a goal of 2 things: to become an astronaut and to become a baseball player. Obviously, one didn't work out, but the other did. And from there, it kind of opened up a whole lot for me. It opened up the world for me. It gave me a lot of insight and perspective, and it just showed what can happen when you persevere and when you put your best foot forward. I also had a love for flight, for space, which allowed for me to pursue my career in aerospace. And I'm a semester from graduating, and hopefully soon I will be going back to complete that. But from that time, just a lot of things that I've been a part of. I started a foundation for inner city youth. I done a lot of speaking. I've actually started my own speaking company to where I can go out and pretty much send my message to the world. And that's something that I'm very, very passionate about. I dibble and dabble in a little bit of real estate. I just got my real estate license, so I'll probably be taking that to another level.
Nice.
But in regards to me being here, it was actually by happenstance. I actually happened to meet you, Hamilton, in a Lyft car. I was actually his Lyft driver, and I know as a former professional baseball player, people would say, oh, you do Lyft, but I would also like to tell a lot of people I didn't make $1 million either. But from that conversation, we had a lot of commonalities, and that was something that really brought us together. We had a lot of introspective conversations that I was very intrigued by, but more so just both of our love for flight. And I think that brought us together, and we continued our conversation, and it led us to here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it goes to show you that 30 minutes in the car, you can either waste it or you can use it.
Exactly.
Right? There's always something that you can talk about. There's always some similarities or some sort of connection that you can make. I mean, we're human beings. If nothing else, just talk about being human, right? The ups and downs of everyday life. But for you, just as you're saying that not every passenger is like, our conversation was, not every driver is like you.
Exactly.
Right? I've had drivers that don't want to talk to me at all, or there might be a language barrier there, and that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But you can always make an attempt. And this ended up being something that turned into, we grabbed coffee one day.
Exactly.
And we continued the conversation. And then once I realized, hey, this guy's got a great message, he's got a great story. It was around the same time of us starting this, and who else better to come on season 1, episode 16 than my friend Brian D. Barton, my Lyft driver, who happens to be a lot more than that. But that was the connection that we made. Going back to what you said about being an astronaut or a baseball player, you know what my 2 were?
Where?
To be a fighter pilot or to work at Sonic.
Sonic.
That's random.
Now that's a big extreme.
Yeah, I know, dude. We would go to Sonic all the time. My parents and I would see them. They wore roller skates, and they would serve you your food. And like a bunch of the high school football players, when I was growing up, because I just idolized these high school football players. We had a really good high school football team. And when I was growing up, going to the games, all of the high school football players worked at Sonic. I thought that's where football players retired, was Sonic. Exactly. I was like, oh yeah, there's the running back. Dream. He must have retired. Now he works at Sonic. In my mind, at 4 years old, that's what people did. So I was like, I want to do what they do. I wanted a shiny blue Dodge truck, and I wanted to work at Sonic, or I wanted to be Maverick and Top Gun.
Well, see, that's the thing that happens, when you're a kid, we really have no limitations of what we could do or what we want to be.
Not at all.
Or even why we choose to do things. I mean, believe it or not, Miami has always been my school of choice when I went to college, but people don't really know why I chose the University of Miami. The reason why I chose the University of Miami because they have my favorite color, orange.
Wow.
And that happened to be one of the first baseball teams that I saw on television playing in the World Series. And I said, hey, they're pretty good, and they have orange. And I always joke around and tell people, I said, hey, I could have easily saw the University of Florida, and I could have been a Gator because they had orange in it too.
Or Tennessee.
Exactly.
They do orange to the extreme.
And so it's just imagine the things that we put in front of people and the impact that they have.
Yeah.
And especially when we're young, I mean, they could lead to a lot of great things, but on the flip side, they can lead to a lot of things that could be destructive if we're not careful about it.
That's true. And you've got to think about your intent, your motives. My intentions for wanting to work at Sonic were so pure.
Exactly.
Right? As a kid, you don't know how much people at Sonic make. You just know that they wear cool roller skates and they serve conies. I can get 200,000 drink combinations. These people bring me those drinks. Like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
But then you talk yourself out of dreams with that one, obviously.
Exactly.
But at the same time, like fighter pilot, I'd give it up on that dream because it was like, oh, well, that's, not realistic. But I can still fly a plane.
Exactly.
Right? So don't let your end goal, right, be the determining factor of whether or not you even achieve the basis of what you wanted that goal for.
Exactly.
I guess, right?
Exactly. Because just like you, I wanted to fly jets too in the Air Force, but I had to make the big decision.
Exactly.
Do I do that or do I play baseball?
Exactly.
And lo and behold, you really couldn't do both, especially if you wanted to take one or the other to the next level. So I chose baseball. And
well, and think about it for the people that don't get to the highest level.
Exactly.
Did you play baseball in high school? Well, you were a baseball player. Congratulations. You completed your goal.
Exactly.
Right? It's just everything else that's icing on the cake, I guess.
Exactly. It's all perspective.
Yeah. So tell us more about your baseball career. Throughout going to Loyola Marymount, is that where you started?
Yep. So from Loyola Marymount, I went on as a walk-on. I was actually on an academic scholarship. So though I had a great high school career, I was still overlooked by a lot of colleges. So I ended up going to Loyola Marymount, which was right down the street from my high school and my junior high. So I kind of stayed in the neighborhood. I was fairly known in that neighborhood, but at the same time, I was fairly known in that neighborhood. So I really didn't want to be there.
Of course. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, that year was a learning experience for me. For one, because it introduced me to the weight room, which, coming out of high school at 165 and now having to be in the gym every single day, that was something that
talk about development.
I wasn't really I really developed physically and mentally because I had to change my whole approach to the game. But I think around the first semester, I kind of knew that I was done with that place. And it wasn't necessarily because it was a bad school or institution. It just my mind was somewhere else. And I already had my heart set on going to the University of Miami. But more so, I told myself when I get 18, I'm going to go and explore and see new things and do different things, because growing up, I never really had much opportunities to go to different places. I loved to travel and I always wanted to travel, but I wasn't afforded that opportunity. So when I had the opportunity to go to Miami, I took full advantage of it, even at the risk of losing my scholarship. I still remember that night that I was getting ready to leave. My mother and we got into this huge argument. And I think for the first time, and I know she said she doesn't remember it, but for the first time she called me stupid.
Wow.
And that really bothered me because I knew it came from a good place of why she was concerned, but I didn't think she understood where my heart was and why I was making a decision where I was risking to give up so much, because my scholarship was being paid for by Boeing. And it was a sweet deal, get free schooling, get your books paid for, get a summer internship, and get a guaranteed job when I graduated. So that was a sweet deal.
Yeah.
And to give all that up, it had to be something bigger as to why I was making that decision. But the thing I remember most is as quickly as we got into that argument and we were, going back and forth, I got a phone call around close to midnight, and the lady who represented Boeing, she called me and said, I know we weren't supposed to do this, but it's more important for you to get your education, and we decided that we were going to extend your scholarship to go to the University of Miami.
That's huge.
And I looked at my mom, she looked at me, and we just kind of embraced each other, and I cried, and she cried with me, and it was one of those, I went from being stupid to, you're pretty smart.
Yeah.
To predicting the future.
Exactly. So that was something that kind of changed, and not that me and my mother had a bad relationship, but it changed the way she looked at me. Mm-hmm. And I remember ever since then, she said that she doesn't really worry about me because she know that when I do make decisions, that it's thought out. Mm-hmm. And so that gave me a lot of confidence going into Miami, because I was like, well, if this worked out, then I damn sure know. Sorry for using the D word.
You're good.
But I can go to Miami and make it.
Yeah.
I can go in Miami and make the baseball team. I can go out there and become a star player. Yeah. But most importantly, I can go out there and become a starter. And that's what I did.
What a confidence boost.
Exactly. And it was kind of hard hearing from people that, Miami is this place where they breed baseball players, and even guys on scholarships, don't make the team. And, what would you do if you didn't make the team? And I never really had that doubt in my mind, because I knew that I can compete against anybody. But at the same time, I told him, I said, well, if I didn't make the team, I'd just play football.
Yeah.
Right? Gave myself another option.
Yeah, of course.
But, and at the time, who wouldn't want to play for Miami football, right?
Yeah.
They just won a national championship, and, they were Miami, almost like the Miami of old. So that was a pretty good option to go to. But I knew that I had what it took to get to the next level and play at a level at the University of Miami. And when I was able to play, I did have to sit out a year because of transfer rules. But when I did get an opportunity to play, I was a starter, and I held my own. But more so, I didn't just hold my own. I actually, in my last year, led the team in hitting.
Wow.
Yep.
Unbelievable.
But, I was still disappointed. And that kind of goes to a string of disappointment sometimes. But also, it goes back to how when you stay on course and stay the court, regardless of whatever pitfalls you have, you can still overcome them, because I wasn't drafted as I would call myself a standout at the University of Miami. And a lot of the concern, it wasn't my attitude. It wasn't me getting into trouble. It wasn't, me having a baby on the side or whatever you may think. It was because I was an aerospace engineering major. And for me, it really didn't make any sense, because I thought that's what they wanted.
Yeah.
They would want a guy who
a safe bet,
focused on their career, and who had their head on their shoulders, and who wouldn't make their organization look bad. But there was more concerned about whether or not my heart was in the game, and whether or not if I did sign, exactly, or whether or not if I was to sign, would I just up and quit and go work for Boeing? Or
Kyler Murray.
Exactly. So it was one of those things where it was hard for me to muster, because I grew up my whole life wanting to be a Major League Baseball player. And I knew what I gave up, from the other career that I wanted to be, which was an astronaut. I knew what I gave up to pursue this. And from there, I didn't let it get the best of me ultimately, because in the beginning it was still hard. I did have that talk with my coach. I did have that talk with my brother. I did cry on shoulders, because even though I was happy hearing the names from my teammates get called off, I still kind of went back to those moments growing up of, why is it always happening to me?
Mm-hmm.
Like, why do I have to keep fighting? Every once in a while, I want to have it easy too.
Yeah.
But, I have to realize and shake that off quickly and say, that's not my calling.
Mm-hmm.
My calling is to show people that you can go through things and that you can still persevere and
Keep going.
And that you can keep building yourself up if nobody else is.
Mm-hmm.
And to find other options, because for me to find other ways, it gives other people the blueprint to find those alternate ways as well. Mm-hmm. So I went and played Summer League. And from Summer League, I had a direct purpose, and that was to get signed. I know my coaches thought my intent was to actually, just come back better for next year, but
Mm-hmm.
I knew what I wanted to do because I knew that what I did in college baseball, it was enough.
It was good enough
for me to know that I was ready for the next level.
Mm-hmm.
So I approached it from that standpoint, and lo and behold, after that season in summer ball, I was signed by the Cleveland Indians and had 3 great minor league seasons with them, and ended up in St. Louis, and I made my major league debut.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Wow. Let's transition into, you're wearing your French team jacket.
Yes.
Talk about that, because that was one thing that you brought up, and I was like, wait, what? Talk about your coaching.
Well, I would throw this disclaimer out there first. Never in my life did I want to be a coach.
Okay.
It was never a goal of mine. It was never something that I aspired to be. I had 3 things. I wanted to get to the big leagues. I wanted to break Hank Aaron's, now Barry Bonds' home run record, and I wanted to become a Hall of Famer. Those were the 3 things I always wanted to do. Only one of them happened.
Yeah.
But
well, that was kind of a tall order.
Exactly.
I'll just put that out there.
But it was a goal, right?
That's a great goal.
You got to have those goals.
Great goal. Aim for perfection. You might just hit excellence.
Exactly. And I think that obviously, if you don't give yourself those lofty goals, then your preparation doesn't work out in a way to where you can become the type of player you want to be.
Exactly.
And I look at that in all aspects of life, right? If you don't give yourself lofty goals, you don't prepare loftily. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that, many of us fail to do in our own lives. And I still struggle in certain areas with that as well. But with the French thing, it was kind of a perfect scenario. A good friend of mine, he actually happened to get the head coaching job there, and he chose a staff. And one thing, he knows that I love to teach. He knows that I love to travel. And he knows that I love trying to learn languages. And so I'm learning French. I get to travel with the team. And coaching, it does bring an aspect of teaching. So when he asked me if I wanted to coach, it was a no-brainer.
Yeah, it checks all your boxes.
Right? So for me, I didn't actually have to look at it as coaching.
Yeah.
I just had to look at it as a string of opportunities.
Yeah, being
right?
on purpose.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's how that worked out, and it's been awesome. Just meeting great guys, getting the opportunity to stretch myself, and putting myself in uncomfortable situations by speaking and trying to learn, but even more so just giving young players the opportunity, or at least to visualize the opportunity that I had, and to share those experiences with them is something that I cherish the most. And as a bonus, we have a good opportunity to make the Olympics. So, what better way than to cap that off?
That's huge.
Yeah.
It's in Tokyo next time?
Yes, in Tokyo. Yeah. So
heck yeah. You been to Tokyo?
Cool.
Never been. And
dude,
I was planning on making that trip, but I say, you know what? I might as well wait and see what happens and see if they'll pay for it instead of me.
Absolutely.
So
yeah.
I think that's something where
more motivation.
We just need to swing our bats.
True. That's true.
You swing our bats, we'll get there. That's kind of what I try to tell.
Well, if you do end up going to the Olympics in Tokyo, let me know. I'll have a reason to go back.
Right.
It's an incredible place.
That'd be awesome.
It's
yeah.
incredible.
I hear a lot of good things about it.
Yeah. No, that's so cool that you get to kind of mix all of that. And so I'm reading a book right now I have for this leadership class I'm in with what's called the 414 ministry. It's an Old Testament leadership course that like 13 guys are going through.
Yes.
But the book that we read this past couple of weeks is called The On Purpose Person. Mm-hmm. And they use this analogy of a light switch. right? And you ask yourself if what you're doing is on purpose or off purpose.
Exactly.
Now, that requires you finding out not necessarily your purpose, but what your missions are, your visions, your goals, where you want to see yourself. And as simple as just a light switch is, knowing if you're on or off purpose is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And then you start thinking about the consequences of your actions if they are off purpose.
Mm-hmm.
How far back are you setting yourself if what you're doing is off purpose?
Exactly.
Right? Because you could have chased something that was completely off purpose, but instead you were presented an opportunity that you said, even though it's not packaged the way that I would expect it to be, it does check all of my boxes.
Exactly.
Right? So
Exactly.
your light switch is on.
Exactly.
And it seems like of all people, your light switch seems to be on a lot, which
Exactly.
I really respect and admire.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Talk about some other things that you're doing, because you said you had your hand in a lot of different things.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned some about real estate and some
Mm-hmm.
speaking, that kind of stuff. Just go in a little bit detail about that.
Well, I think I would start with the speaking.
Okay.
As a baseball player, I saw that as a perfect platform for me. For one, I wrote 2 books, and they kind of go hand in hand, right, with my speaking. But I saw that as a good opportunity for me because, obviously, as a baseball player, who wouldn't want to have a baseball player come in and speak to their kids, right, or their company or whatnot? So I saw it as a good opportunity to leverage my position as a baseball player, but also my experiences and what I can bring from the game and apply it to real life situations, but also as a way to motivate younger people, especially those who came from environments like myself who may not feel encouraged enough to pursue certain goals and whatnot. So for them to have an example of someone who either looked like them or who've been through the same experiences as them, I thought that was a good opportunity for me to be able to send my message. So I started speaking a lot. I started doing a lot of speaking in the communities and with organizations. I've volunteered at the Youth Detention Center out here in Atlanta, which was also a great but humbling experience because, you have a opportunity to impact, young adults, but also adolescents. But there is something in the back of your head that says some of these people aren't getting out.
Yeah.
Right? So how do you keep them encouraged? And that was something that I struggled with. But regardless of whatever situation you're placed in, there's always an opportunity for growth. And I think that with my speaking, that's what I try to offer. And I always tell people that, a message is not a message if you keep it in. So I continue to keep putting my messages out there,
And
whether
it's just an echo.
in a book or exactly.
It just continues to bounce
go.
around in there.
Exactly.
That can be detrimental.
Very detrimental. And it's a lot of noise clutter too, right? You got to release that stuff.
Noise is a perfect example.
It's like when I prep for a speech, right? I'm always nervous,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm always nervous until I'm actually on stage letting it out because I know I don't have to hold on to it anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And that's kind of how I feel just inside with my...
It's like Mentos
with what
and
I have
Diet
to
Coke.
get. Exactly.
It's going to explode.
It's going to explode. So you gotta
gotta
open
let
that
it
cap
out.
and you gotta
I
let
get
it
you.
out. You gotta get that fizz, and that's what I get from that. And from there, I decided that my next pursuit was to, start a foundation where I'm still in the process of building up, but it centers around introducing inner city youths based out of St. Louis, but eventually, I will extend it. But to introduce them to the concept of travel, which everything that I try to do, I wanted to have a central theme, but also it has to be something I'm passionate about too, to
Mm-hmm.
even want to put the time into it. So obviously I'm passionate about travel. I'm passionate about entrepreneurship, which I also feel that as young people, the best way you build up your community is to put yourself in a situation where you can sustain and help your community sustain. And
Mm-hmm.
what better way to do that than by having commerce and business structures in your community.
Mm-hmm.
And lastly is public speaking. And that's something that I do. I'm a part of Toastmasters, but I really enjoy speaking because it gives me a voice. And I think having that voice is one of the most powerful things that we can have as people, but more so is one of the most powerful things the youth can have, because it's often said, you're to be seen and not heard. And who hears that more often than not, right? The youth. And to be able to give them that voice and to feel comfortable and confident with their voices, I think is something that's very important. But it's not just to have them individually, but it's to use everything together, where you can form sort of an entity with travel, speaking, and entrepreneurship, where they can all go hand in hand. And I think that's something that's very important. So with that, the most important thing that I first say that we have to have is we got to get these kids passports, right? I mean, it's the key to the world. And so with the organization, the objective is to help these youth get their passports, so that doesn't have to be the hurdle, right? Because when you trying to deal with, do I eat today or do I get a passport? Most likely, most of them are going to choose, well, we got to survive, right? So you eliminate one of those things, and now you gave them the key and access to not only just the world, but a whole knowledge of information and different people that they can meet, that they can introduce, who can probably open Pandora's box to the next level.
I agree. I read the statistic. I don't know if it's still accurate, but of the 330 million people that live in the United States, how many passports are there? How many of those 330 million hold passports?
It's probably not a lot.
About 33 million. 10% of Americans are even able to travel internationally. 10%. That's why you don't meet many Americans when you start traveling to countries that aren't American destinations, right?
Exactly.
There are some destinations that I would quote American destinations. Oh, we're going to Paris, or we're going to London, or we're going to the, to
or you gotta
Belize,
go to the beaches,
or
right?
Somewhere like that.
Yeah.
But when you go to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, or when you go to Dubai, or when you go to somewhere that's not in the normal scope of vacation that Americans think about, you meet a lot of Germans.
Exactly.
You meet a lot of Brits. You meet people from Asia that want to travel, and you start to see, man, no wonder we have problems back home.
Exactly.
We haven't seen anything that's outside of our comfort zone. We only see the, problems that we have down our own street and bicker with our neighbors. It's because you haven't seen how other people deal with real problems, right? Or how other people live without the things that we take for granted. You mentioned Ethiopia. I want you to extend on that, and you mentioned the 3 things that you saw that those people had. That was really moving to me. Go into a little bit of detail on that.
So it's funny that you mentioned Ethiopia, because that just popped up in my head, and I was going to mention. So we're all on the same wavelength.
That's right.
But it was something that changed my life. Initially, that wasn't even supposed to have been the trip, and I was supposed to go to Egypt the year before with the School of Architecture at the University of Miami, but we all know that the tragic event of 9/11 happened, and during that time, they decided to cancel the trip, and I was a little disappointed. I understood, what was going on, globally and domestically, but at the same time, it was one of those, it always seems to happen to me.
That was
type
my
feelings,
trip.
right?
Yeah, I have to get through this again.
Exactly.
How am I ever going to get to Africa, right?
Exactly.
And so the next year I say, well, I guess we got to try it again. But I think Egypt's off the table still. But I'm going to make this trip a personal trip. And I went to Ethiopia by myself. And it kind of taught me a few things about myself. First is that I'm a lot stronger than what I thought I was. To go halfway around the world and not know anyone, only know a handful of words in Amharic, and to really be willing to try new things and to be different. But more so, it taught me a little more about the world than what I knew just being in the States, and more so growing up in LA, because obviously in LA, traveling wasn't a big thing that was talked about. Meeting new people outside of the country is not something that you talk about. In fact, people think meeting people from different countries is crazy because they always tell me, well, what if they're crazy? And I said, well, hey, what if the person you met at the club is crazy, right? But I had a talk with this gentleman. He was the guard at the embassy that I wasn't necessarily staying at, but I was put in contact with. It was actually the embassy of Ghana, but the guy was a resident and a native of Ethiopia, and he spoke very, very, very little English. I spoke very little Amharic, but we found a way to communicate. And he was telling me his desire to want to come to the States, and obviously everybody wants to come to the States for a better opportunity, right? While I'm trying to leave the States, for an opportunity to see, right? Point. And he says, the thing about Ethiopia is that regardless of what everybody thinks, obviously a lot of people are poor. They don't have a lot of things that we have in the States, but he says what keeps them grounded is that they have three things that are important to them. That's food, that's family, and it's God. And without those things, they didn't really need any more. And it's not to say that there was no ambition, but they had the basics, they had the foundation. And that was something that really resonated with me, for one, because I didn't really grow up a very religious or spiritual person. We didn't go to church a lot growing up. It was something that kind of happened towards the latter part of my life. But even in a situation where I grew up where we didn't have a lot of money, where I was in college struggling with no money, I still was better off, right? And it put things in perspective because I had a few $100s in my pocket, but I felt like a millionaire out there, right? Yet I still wasn't happy. And I'm talking to this man who had way less than me, but he was happy. And so on my flight back from Ethiopia, I really took that time to just think about it. And I had to talk about that experience in my book, especially when it pertained to how our construct of money and our ideas of money permeates, through our society, because these people realized that they had the most important things, and it came in threes. And obviously that's what the most important things come in. And for me, that was very powerful, and it was life-changing.
Yeah. You didn't hear on that list Rolexes.
No Rolexes.
You didn't hear Range Rovers.
No Range Rover.
Or anything.
And it's not to say that they wouldn't want it if they had
absolutely.
it, right?
They'd take it, of course. Who
but
wouldn't?
It's not important.
My parents always, and they remind me of this all the time, they say, do you know when we were happiest? I wasn't born yet, which is kind of offensive to me. But it was before I was born. They were living in a house, and it was in a pretty rough neighborhood. And they said we were never happier than when we lived in that house, and we were never poorer than when we lived in that house. I said, because it didn't matter. My dad says, because I had your mom. My mom said, because I had your dad. And it didn't matter where we lived. We would talk to our neighbors, and we had more than that after, but we were never happier than that. And I think they just try to drill that into me. Enjoy having nothing because you have everything to gain, right? When you have everything, you have everything to lose.
And, and I had that same sort of experience on the field. And I know when we talk about mentality, you never want to have a losing mentality. But I always tell my players that, and a lot of my friends, that probably the happiest time I had playing baseball was when I was playing baseball with the Newark Bears, and we were a last place team. And it wasn't the fact that we weren't happy about not winning a lot, but we were still a family. I mean, I've probably gotten into about 3 altercations with my teammates, but right after we would go out, right? We joked around a lot. We picked each other up when another was down, and even when we had tough games and it didn't turn around, we still had each other's back. And I tell people, I said, I've never had more fun on any team in my life than this losing team right here. And sometimes it takes that, right? Because there's a sense of humility that comes with it. And what better way to learn about life is when you're in a humble state.
Yep.
And I think that's where it put us all, and so when you're in a position where you don't have much, whether it's on the field, whether it's off the field, you always aspire for more, right? Or for better. I think that would be a better word. You could aspire for better.
Yeah.
And it keeps you always looking up.
And how do you do that? Through
development. Exactly.
Through development.
Through development.
I think that's a perfect word. So, as we wrap things up, what's next for you in this 2019? Because I always like to think that my guests would like to come back one day, and the things that we talked about, we can take bits and pieces of and say, hey, remember when you said this? How's that going? Whatever. Exactly. What's next for Brian D. Barton?
Well, I'm always trying to build an empire, right?
Of course.
I think a lot of us are, and it goes right back to that development stage, right? Got to develop something around me, because every day, I think I strengthen my mindset and I get a different perspective of the world. But I'm really want to just take my speaking to the next level, and the best way to do that is to keep speaking, right? But not just to keep speaking, but to make sure that your words have impact.
Yep.
And so I'm always working on something, and I got a couple more books in the way, but I just want to keep growing, and hopefully, by this time next year, I have a bigger brand. I have a bigger brand as a speaker. I have a few more properties under my belt too, because I love real estate, and I'll probably be in the process of getting that elusive degree that everybody wants me to get.
Yeah, I want you to get it.
So I'm looking forward to that, because I think it can help me take some things to the next level, especially with the message that I send out.
Absolutely. Well, we'll be praying for you.
Thank you.
Throughout your experience, your journey. You're not one to shy away from things that are tough.
No.
From having to swim upstream sometimes. And that's what I've loved about this show and this season in particular, is bringing people on the show. They're willing to be vulnerable and say, hey, look, life hasn't always been great. The things of my life haven't always been easy. But through your experiences and through Russell's experiences and through the other people that we bring on the show, I get to have a bit of that experience through association, right?
Exactly.
And then it's a learning experience, development for us all.
Exactly.
So if there's one thing that I want people to take away from this show, it's that every episode you can become more developed just by listening to someone's experience.
Exactly.
So what you're talking about is just creating a platform.
Yeah, and and we kind of get all of this without me even talking about my whole Major League Baseball career, right?
Exactly.
And that shows just how much more to a person's life that they have than what we really think, because a lot of people, they want to pigeonhole me into one area, and I think one of the main things that intrigued a lot of people about my story was that I wasn't just a baseball player.
Exactly.
Every time I went to spring training, they wanted to know where I went.
Yep.
Instead of if I was ready to play. Like, where did you go, huh? What book are you reading? And I actually thought that was pretty cool, because it showed that you could be well-rounded and still be respected. And I think the biggest compliment that I got as a baseball player, and I'm not sure how much time we have, but was I was signing a little boy's autograph at Busch Stadium, my rookie season. And I remember his mother came up to me and she says, out of all the people on this team, all these superstars, Albert Pujols and Yadier Molina, I always tell my kid to be like you, because you put education first.
Wow.
And I'm like, little old me, the guy who sits on the bench.
Yeah.
But it shows that even when you think something's not being paid attention to, it's being paid attention to.
Somebody's always watching.
Exactly. And for me, that meant a lot. And it just kind of helped me want to continue to put my messages out there.
I like that. Well, I always say that if you don't define yourself, someone else will do it for you.
Exactly. And
right?
That's very, very, very true. It's controlling the narrative, and we have to control our own narrative.
Yeah. I mean, you came out swinging. I'm Brian D. Barton.
Brian D.
Right?
Exactly.
You defined yourself. I love it.
Exactly.
But you're not – baseball is what you play. It's not who you are.
Exactly.
You're more than that. So
exactly.
thank you for sharing that with us
Thank
today.
you.
If we have any listeners that want to continue the conversation with you about development, this is your time to kind of self promote. What's a way for people to get in touch with you? You said you got some books out. Just a couple of ways for them to interact with you.
Yes, I have 2 books out. One titled Mindset, Awareness and Action. The other one's is Stats and Situations, the Game Plan to Success. If you want to get those, or if you just want to send me a message, you can do that at my website at www.brianbartonaccess.com, or you can reach out to me on Twitter and Instagram at the same handle at Brian Deon Barton, Deon. See, I didn't forget the D. I just spelled it out.
Don't forget it.
So, and with that being said, I just really want to just leave everybody with this, and I think it's very important because as a baseball player, I always thought that was my end-all be-all, right? But I realized that at 25 when I got there, that I had a whole lot more life, to live. And I remember always saying that, if I was to get to the big leagues, I could die a happy man. And I realized at 25, I wasn't ready to die, right? Mm-hmm. And so it made me realize that, goals that we set for ourselves are not endpoints. Mm-hmm. They're just stepping stones to the next. So as we reach one, it's just a springboard to the next. So when baseball was done, it was a springboard to the next ventures. And I think that in the spirit of development, that's how we continue to develop as we keep searching for more.
That's it. No, that's the perfect point to end on. Thank you.
Thank
you said D is for Dion, but it's actually for Brian Development Barton.
I can work with that too.
Yeah. No, but
That's perfect.
Thank you a million times over. You're a friend of Inneractions. We're a friend of yours.
Appreciate
we'll be
that.
Supporting you in any way that we can. For everybody listening, thank you for being here. This concludes season 1. I mean, what an incredible experience. 4 months since we started. We were in videos. We're doing little 10-minute videos, and now we're doing 50-minute podcasts with people as incredible as you. And then we'll have season 2 coming up here. We're going to take 8 weeks off. So just as a reminder to everybody listening, if you haven't heard the rest of the episodes, reach back and listen to all the other episodes for the next 8 weeks before we come to you with anything new. But throughout the next 8 weeks, we're really going to be getting together, organizing, and coming to you with some hard-hitting stories and experiences. So we already have 4 or 5 guests lined up for next season. Just riding that momentum. Like you said, it's stepping stones that have been placed there. But if you don't take the first step, then you never know where the path could lead. So we're just honored to be able to be a stepping stone for you and your message. And at any point, please share this with others. I think it's a great opportunity for you to get your message out there to say, hey, look, if you want to hear some of my work, here's a podcast for you. So, cool. But no, episode 16. This concludes it. Thank you again, Brian. Couldn't be happier to have you on the show. I know I've been developed today. I hope you feel that way too.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. Everybody, we will catch you for season 2 on May 4th. We'll be excited to bring that to you. Until then, go love on somebody today, and for the next 8 weeks, go love on somebody those days too. I'm Hamilton Winters, and we hope to see you back then.